Hi everybody, my name is Russ Terry and I'm your host today on Real Talk on Racism. Super excited to be here with you. Thank you for watching us. We have an excellent guest today. I'm excited to welcome Phil Woolfolk from the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey. Phil, I can tell already you're such a great guy, and it's my pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, Russ.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. All right, so first some logistical questions. How many members does the Chamber have across our fine state of New Jersey?
You know, I get asked that question quite a bit, and I've just come on board as the Chief Operations Officer of the Chamber, and what I can say is that the founder, president, and CEO of the Chamber, John Harmon, the way we really look at it, we have about 80,000 African American owned businesses across the state and probably about 1.2 plus African Americans living in the state. And our advocacy and the work that we do, providing resources, information, and opportunities, we look at all of those folks as being the folks we represent. So that's our broad view of how we handle our work and our mission.
Got it, and congrats on the COO gig. They're lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Even just having met you within the last couple of weeks, I can tell you and John and the rest of the Chamber do amazing work.
Thank you, thank you,
You're welcome.
Very much.
So, of those people that you are your constituents, if you will, what % would you say have experienced racism?
You know, I haven't had that conversation, quite frankly, with all of them, but if their experiences have been anything similar to myself, my family members, and friends and people in my close circle, I would say that probably all of them have had some level of experience with racism, whether it's microaggressions or overt situations.
And we'll talk about microaggressions in a second. When we were planning for today's episode, you told me about a story earlier in your career. You had a job interview, you called them before you left, you drove there, then you got there,
Right.
They saw that you are an African American man, and all of a sudden in those 45 minutes, the job was no longer available, which horrifies me that that happened. What emotions did you or do you have as a result of that incident specifically?
Well, you know what it does is it can be very demoralizing. It makes you very angry, and you know, but you have to move on and continue to try and live up to what you feel that it is you should be doing with your life, whether it's professionally or as an entrepreneur, you know, whatever the case may be. The thing that I found really very interesting about that is that I was actually in the headhunter's office, and the headhunter called, and the headhunter basically sent over my resume, and so they had that conversation about, oh, this guy sounds really great, sounds like might be a great fit. And then all of a sudden I get there and no one wants to come out of the back, but I could see them peeping around the corner until eventually I had to say, well, you know, I've been here for, 15, 20 minutes. I was under the impression they were waiting for me. Are they going to interview me, or has something changed, right? And so the young lady who was out front was obviously very embarrassed by it all, and she scurried to the back of the office and had some conversation, and then she came back, and then after a couple of minutes, it was just obvious that they were no longer interested. So, and then somebody eventually came out and said, oh, we're sorry for you, to your time, we had another candidate, and the position is no longer available, but we're happy to reimburse you for your time and your gas and that sort of thing. But the universe has a way of getting even sometimes when things like that happen, right? So I don't know if you remember the Resolution Trust Corporation.
RTC, yes.
RTC?
Yes.
So it turns out after, I don't know, maybe 30, 60 days after that, I'm reading the newspaper, and sure enough, this bank is listed as one of the RTC takeovers, right? So the way I looked at it was that was probably not the place I needed to be anyway, because I would have been probably looking for another job. I guess the justice that the universe played was the folks that wouldn't interview me were probably out of work themselves shortly after that, right? So, so it all worked out.
Well, one of my close friends, Amber, she says, in those situations, welcome to the karma restaurant where there's no menu, you get what you deserve.
So it's really interesting. I think Dr. Martin Luther King once said, and I'm paraphrasing, and I understand it came from really from someone else, but it goes something like the arc of the universe is long, but it bends toward justice, right? And so sometimes there are things that happen that are not fair, that are not right, but I ultimately ended up in a good spot with a great company, and I've had a great career since then. So there are things that happen that you don't have any control over, and you just roll with the punches and keep going.
Well, I would imagine you and so many others like you, people of color here in New Jersey and elsewhere throughout the U.S., have to be so resilient to, pick yourself back up after an incident like that and countless other incidents happen.
Oh, sure. And some of the things are really very, they're small and they're hard to define sometimes, because you don't, once you've had that experience, then you view life through that lens that these possibilities exist. But sometimes you may misjudge a situation and think that it's racism, and it turns out that it's not, right?
It's understandable that given the evidence of things that have transpired against you and other people of color, that it's logical that there might be other things that do happen. And
oh yeah, and because you've had those experiences, you also understand when you see someone else react to it, because they're reacting from a place of past experiences, and it's it creates anger and anxiety and the whole 9 yards. So
and all of those negative emotions, the anger, the anxiety, the demoralizing feeling, are all 100% natural and valid based on the things that have transpired.
Oh yeah.
So you mentioned microaggressions a few minutes ago, and I want to go back to that. And for our viewers that don't know about microaggressions, these are those little subtle things that happen that may seem immaterial on the surface, but of course are quite material, especially when you add them up and they happen multiple times. So what's an example of a microaggression that you or one of your family members has experienced?
Well, I can give you a couple of quick points. My oldest daughter, I remember she wanted to have a double major, and she went to talk to somebody about it, and she walked into the office, and I think they made the assumption that she wouldn't be eligible for a double major because it's someone who should have a high GPA and who's a good student academically. So they assumed that based on her appearance, this is my assumption, that they couldn't fathom that she would be able to handle a double major. And so she was puzzled by it, so she asks a few questions, and then she shares what her GPA was, and then the person takes a different look at her when they decided, oh, she has a GPA of 3.9 or 3.876 or whatever it was, and so they gave her it gave more credence to the fact that she probably could handle a double major. So not only did she end up with a double major in her undergrad, she also did for her master's as well. So, but it's one of those things that I would say, why don't you just ask the person, what's your GPA? And if they say, oh, it's 2.2, then you could say, well, you probably need to be a 3.5 or something, because if you're having a hard time handling one major based on your GPA, then two majors are going to be tough. But people make those assumptions based on wherever they're coming from. Sometimes maybe experiences they've had. Sometimes it just may be you obviously couldn't be brilliant enough to do this. And then professionally, in one of my banking positions, I remember I had a large office, and I had 2 desks in the office, and I was managing a sales team, and so I had people in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware, and people would come in for meetings, and there was another regional manager who would come in to meet with his folks, and so the spare desk in my office was always used by someone, right? So then a new guy comes in and decides, oh, I like this office, and I'm a senior vice president, I want this office, and Phil could use a cubicle, right? So he actually wanted to take over my office. And I decided, well, I don't think I want to give up my office. I'm not sure why, if you're coming into this space, like once every 3-4 weeks, once every month, once every 6 weeks, why you need an office, why don't you use the cubicle, right? So make a long story short, we had some communication about it that was not all that pleasant, but I stood my ground. And then I was there one Saturday morning, and I decided, this guy is not willing to play nice in the sandbox. So I'm going to change the sandbox. So I disconnected the spare desk, took it apart, moved it into the mailroom, and put my desk in the middle of the office, and I locked the door. So when he visited the next time, there was no spare desk. So my attitude was, well, if the cubicles were good enough for me, there's no spare desk. Maybe you should use the cubicle. That created a little bit of stress. He called my boss, and my boss at the time was very astute and very respectful. We had a great working relationship, and I was a high contributor within the organization. So eventually, the guy just got the point that I guess I can't take this guy's office, even though I have a higher title.
Got it.
But when you're dealing with people and you have a position of mutual value and mutual respect, right? Then the titles don't really matter. It's you're a human being, I'm a human being. You come into a space, we're all trying to do a good job. There's a spare desk there. Everyone else has sat there and used the desk. Why is it you think you can kick me out? And but I think it's it's a lack of respect as relates to people who are different, and people who are different than you are, and you make some assumption that your value is greater than theirs.
Well, certainly what we're trying to do here at the show is educate people on, what examples are of
Right.
these microaggressions, and what they can do differently
Right.
if they are out there navigating work or life or whatever. So what's your number one piece of advice for people watching this who want to not just not be racist, but consciously be anti-racist?
Right. Well, I think people of goodwill and people who care about morality and care about doing things the right way and sincerely want to treat people the way they want to be treated, that I think you have to come to the table with some level of curiosity. You can't make assumptions that based on what you were told during your childhood or how things were communicated where you went to school or in your social circle or whatever the case may be, that everything you've ever heard about people who don't look like you is the absolute gospel. And to the degree that you're able to get to know people and spend time with them and communicate with them and ask questions and get a better understanding about, I think you come to the conclusion that we're a lot more alike than we are different. And I think you also come to the conclusion that from a business standpoint, it's more profitable to have more opinions and more thoughts, right? And so that's why corporations are run by, you have an executive management team, you have a board of directors, you have a hopefully a diverse group of people who are coming at it with a diverse set of circumstances and experiences, and collectively they're able to make better decisions which drive a company into a better situation, right? So, and to that end, one of the things the president and CEO, John Harmon's been able to do in terms of collaboration is we have a relationship with the New Jersey Chamber of Commerce and with the New Jersey Business and Industry Association. And those relationships are both tied to agreements that are specific to diversity, equity, and inclusion, adding more blacks to corporate boards, more blacks to the C-suites within corporations, and opening up procurement opportunities for people of color so that those corporations are spending more money with a diverse population. And so I think when you look at the economics of blacks being the lowest economically in terms of highest levels of poverty, the net worth of blacks is around $5,900 compared to over $300,000 for whites. And you look at systemic racism that goes back even to the Federal Home Administration as it relates to covenants within contracts that really restricted the ability for a person to sell their home or property to a person who was a non-Caucasian. So these are all things that are very real that are invisible to most folks, because if you're on the privileged side of the tracks, you have no reason to contemplate or think about these things.
Or even know. Right? I didn't even know that.
Right? Or even know about these things. So there's two books I would recommend. One is The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. The other is The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander.
Okay.
And these are, they're very good reads about historical perspectives as it relates to Jim Crow laws, and as it relates to a lot of what happened economically to restrict African Americans' ability to own homes in certain neighborhoods. And then, there were sort of scams created where folks wanted to do block busting, and so what they would do is they would have say an African American team up with come out with a realtor and walk through white neighborhoods, and then convince white folks that their properties were going to be going down in value because the black people have just moved into the neighborhood. There are even stories and accounts of paying people to ride up and down the streets with the radio blasting to indicate the neighborhood is changing. That forced, in some cases, Caucasians to sell their homes at discounted prices, and then they took out ads and marketed those homes to African Americans as communities that are now open for African Americans to move in, and then African Americans paid inflated prices for those same homes. So there are all kinds of things that have happened historically that bring us to this point. But I think as the African American community works in collaboration with organizations like the New Jersey Chamber of Commerce, New Jersey Business and Industry Association, we have great relationship with the New Jersey Economic Development Authority and the state of New Jersey, and working with various corporations who understand the idea of creating a fairer economy that helps create better value for everybody as it relates to improving the economic mainstream of all of our citizens.
Well, thank you for filling me in on that, and I'm glad there are some things that you're positive about. In terms of hopeful. I'm a hopeful and optimistic person also, so it sounds like there are lots of great organizations here in New Jersey who are working together.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, we met at a diverse chambers event that was held on Zoom, and and there have been some relationships established out of that I think will be fruitful, and that will help some of the businesses that were present there that day, and I think as people get a better understanding about the fact that we can all profit and grow and prosper together, that we make those strides in the right direction. So I'm always hopeful and optimistic because, what's the real choice? I mean, stay in bed, put the covers over your head, and just forget about it.
Yeah.
So we can't do that, right?
Well, you're doing lots of great work, and that's my mindset too, to get up and get out and get going and try to make some positive change.
Oh, for sure.
So you're also a real estate investor, and you told me the other day a story about one of your best tenants, a transgender individual, and shifting gears a bit, what would you say are the similarities between the challenges that a trans person has and an African American person has?
Well, I would think some of them are similar. I can't speak with as much authority on that as I certainly can. Being an African American man growing up in living in the United States of America and traveling around the country and other parts of the world, but I can certainly surmise that some of the arbitrary dispositions that people take around what you look like and what you're going to be like based on what you look like, what you bring to the party in terms of your skills and your knowledge and information and all that, really sometimes get negated because people have a preconceived notion about who you are and what you are and how you're going to be. So I would think some of those things are similar.
And hopefully, because of this show and other discussions like this, we reduce or eliminate the preconceived notions that exist out there, and don't assume things. And our viewers can be more aware of people, as you said earlier, who are different from them.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so we have a few minutes left. This has been a fantastic discussion. If somebody seeing our show today wants to join the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey, how do they do so? Well,
they can visit us on our website, which is www.AACCNJ.com. And we have a very good website that has a lot of information about webinars, seminars, workshops, various events that we hold for networking to have folks have the ability to expand their networks and expand their businesses, expand their opportunities. And because we're working with corporations that really want to do business with us, it's a good time for folks to join the chamber, because we're looking for folks who have certain skill sets that we can help bring them to the table in terms of companies that are looking to do business with them and maybe looking for the specific services or products that they offer.
Well, I'm all about win-win scenarios.
Oh, yeah.
So that's great. And I did check out the website, and it's very robust. And he's right. There are so many different events that the African American Chamber of Commerce in New Jersey has happening. So certainly encourage you to check it out.
Oh, yeah.
In our last few minutes here, what final thoughts do you want to share with our viewers?
Well, actually, I have something here I think I'd like to share.
I love it.
That I brought with me. Because I think it speaks to the disposition and the mindset, and some of which needs to change. So here, and this is from the New Jim Crow. So there's a passage here that says, "People of goodwill have been unwilling to see black and brown men in their humanness, as entitled to the same care, compassion, and concern that will be extended to one's own family, friends, neighbors, and loved ones." And then it goes further to say that, and this was a quote from Dr. Martin Luther King that says, "One of the great tragedies of man's long trek along the highway of history has been the limiting of neighborly concern to tribe, race, class, or nation. The consequence of this narrow, insular attitude is that one does not really mind what happens to people outside their own group. And racial indifference and blindness can even be more overt in terms of racial hostility as a form of, it makes a sturdy foundation for all racial caste systems." So when you think about that indifference, and you think about what happened to George Floyd, right? This is a man who was murdered on national TV for all the world to see. That can only happen if you have a very low tolerance, or very low, you place a very low meaning on the life of another human being to just do that. Now, that officer probably would not have done that to someone who looked like him. That's something he would not have done to a neighbor, or a neighbor's child, or a neighbor's husband, right? And so that's the indifference that I think they're speaking about here. That, you know, if you accord the same compassion and the same, you know, respect for people of all types, then you don't devolve into a situation where someone's life is so meaningless that you feel you can take it and it's of no consequence.
Well, great story and quote from the book. That phrase, neighborly concern, is certainly what we're trying to do here at the show.
Absolutely.
Exude neighborly concern. We may live in different parts of New Jersey,
right,
but, you know, I would be honored to, you know, be considered a neighbor to you and exude that neighborly concern.
Right.
And, you know, we really are not, we don't want to be indifferent. We want to try to make a difference,
right,
and that's the point of this show,
sure,
which is about to wrap up.
Right. Well,
Phil Woolfolk,
thank you so much, Russ.
It was so great to meet you in person for the first time
you.
today,
Same
and have you on the show. He's the COO of the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey. I'm Russ Terry. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Real Talk on Racism. We're grateful to you for the support, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're welcome.